Inuit. The Inuit enjoyed an ice cream-like treat made from seal fat and berries. The Inuit. Find the truth. Everything you are about to read is true, except for one of the sentences on this page. Which one is true? True or false? The Inuit eat raw meat. True or false? The Inuit have exactly 5 different words for snow. Find the answers in this book. This map shows the movement eastward of the Thule people and the areas where the Inuit live today. So the white area on the map is where the Inuits' homelands were. The arrows are the migration route of the people of the Thule culture. Early Inuit history. The Inuit have always been an Arctic people. The cold tundra and icy seas influence everything in their lives. Today, the Inuit live in eastern Siberia, across northern Alaska and Canada, and in Greenland. But 1,100 years ago, the Inuits' ancestors, the people of the Thule culture, made their home on the Alaskan coast. An individual member of the Inuit people is called an Inuit. People of the Thule culture made the framework of houses from whale bones. The Thule culture. People in the Thule culture built houses with stone floors. Whalebone walls were covered with rock, animal skins, and layers of sod. They lived in small groups of fewer than 50 people. When traveling on land, they used sleds made of driftwood and pulled by dogs. For sea travel, they built large boats called umaaks by tying walrus and seal skins over a driftwood frame. Around the year 1000 CE, members of the Thule culture began moving east. Along the way, they encountered a people they called the Inuit. The Inuit belonged to the simpler Dorset culture. They lacked dogs for drawing sleds and bows and arrows for bringing down food, such as caribou and polar bears. By the 1200s, the Thule peoples had better tools and weapons. This allowed them to drive away the Inuit and settle in western Greenland. The Inuit carved pictures on walrus tusks. Inuits sometimes carve the story of hunts or other events on treasured objects. Once in Greenland, the Thule peoples encountered travelers from across the Atlantic Ocean, the Vikings. The Vikings called the native peoples they met Skraelings. At times, the two groups may have traded. Viking witness writings state that at other times they fought. How often it happened is unknown. Both the Thule peoples and the Vikings hunted during the summer on Greenland's eastern coast. This is probably where they encountered one another. Inuit people in Greenland. The Algonquian gave the Inuit the name Eskimos. Traditionally, the Algonquian people lived in what is now Quebec and Ontario, Canada. In Canada, meanwhile, a shift in climate that experts call the Little Ice Age made the Arctic colder. The Thule peoples moved farther south. No longer could they hunt the whales they had once used for meat, homes, and umaaks. As the Thule traveled, they encountered other Native American peoples such as the Algonquin. The two groups did not get along very well. Over time and with their travels, the ways of the Thule changed. They eventually developed into a new people known as the Inuit. The Arctic is both cold and very dry. It is actually a desert. An Inuit hunter walks across the ice. Survival in the Arctic. To live in the Arctic's extreme cold demands toughness. To get by, human beings need high-energy food, special clothing, and the right tools. Their homes have to protect against frigid temperatures and howling winds. The Thule peoples and later the Inuit and other Arctic peoples, such as the Aleut and the Yupik, became experts in meeting the challenges. Arctic life, however, has never been easy. Even today, with electricity, packaged food, and snowmobiles, Arctic life is not easy for most people. The search for food. The tundra ground thaws only a few inches deep in summer and only for a short time. Because of the lack of good soil, as well as the Arctic's short, warm season, the Inuit were unable to grow crops. Instead, they survived by hunting, fishing, and gathering plant foods such as berries, roots, and seaweed. For most Inuit, meat from wild animals was the most important source of food. Inuit used harpoons to hunt seals and walruses. Fatty, protein-rich seal meat gave people strength and energy. Ring seals weigh up to 150 pounds, or 70 kilograms. A seal meal. Seals sometimes made up half of the Inuit diet. Inuit went after all kinds of seals and hunted in the same way as polar bears. Bears weep by holes that seals make in the ice in order to surface and breathe. Like the bears, an Inuit hunter lay on the ice next to an air hole with his harpoon, a spear with a sharp tip made of bone. The hunter would drop a wood chip or other floater into the water. Just before the seal appeared, the floater moved. This let the hunter know the seal was coming. He timed his harpoon thrust for when the seal came up through the hole. Then he dragged the seal onto the ice. When finished, he made a sacrifice to Sedna, the water spirit that they believed in. This showed respect for the seal spirit. Not doing so brought bad luck. The Inuit believed that. Inuit often ate the meat raw where they had made the kill. A hunter waits for a seal to appear. Hunters scratch the ice with seal claws to attract seals. The Inuit people depended on food from the sea. The mighty bowhead. Inuit gathered into groups to hunt large animals such as walruses, narwhals, and especially the 65-foot or 20-meter bowhead whale. When whaling, 20 hunters set out in an umaak and launched a harpoon, dragging air-filled sealskin bags. The bags kept a bowhead from plunging into deep water after it was hit. Then, whenever it surfaced for air, the hunters harpooned it again. They continued to attack the whale until it died. In Europe, the caribou is called the reindeer. Caribou can swim 6 miles per hour. Other meat. Groups of Inuit also hunted the huge, dangerous walrus. When not hunting, men and sometimes women fished for Arctic cod and lake trout. They usually ate the fish raw. Groups of hunters also tracked the large herds of caribou over the tundra. In addition to spearing the animals, hunters tried to drive caribou into rivers. This made the caribou easier to catch. Long-lived giants. The bowhead whale may have the longest lifespan of any animal. This was proven in 2007 when a 130-year-old harpoon tip was dug out of a bowhead that had recently been killed in Alaska. The tip dated to about 1880, meaning the whale had been alive in that year. Scientists believe the bowhead was even older. Because native hunters never killed calves, the whale must have been at least a few years old when it was harpooned. Inuits traditionally dressed in furs to keep warm. Animals provided the Inuit with clothes as well as food. Inuit women turned animal skins into shirts, leggings, pants, shoes, and boots. They used bone needles and made thread from tendon. For an Inuit hunter, a woman's skill with needle and thread meant the difference between life and death. Men depended on their clothes to stay warm and dry. A flaw in a boot, for example, could lead to frostbite and death. Knowing your sewing. Women found the strongest, best tendon in the back of the caribou. In addition, the caribou skin made excellent clothing. The animal's hollow hairs trapped air. As a result, clothing made from caribou hide was both warm and lightweight. To make clothes, the women sewed a double line of tiny stitches together tightly. Water caused the tendon thread to get bigger. When it did, it filled the hole created by the needle. Inuits make boots from seal or caribou skin. Inuit girls learned sewing from their mothers and elders. The anorak. For the Inuit, no clothing item was more important than the anorak or parka. These coats were made from caribou or sealskin, or sometimes from the intestine of a seal. The anorak had to resist wind chills of negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 73 degrees Celsius. They also kept the wearer dry during boat journeys and whale hunts. Some anoraks looked like modern raincoats. Others were lined with fur from the polar bear, fox, or wolverine. Women wore hoods that could cover a baby on her back. Kamik, or mucklucks, were soft boots made of skin. They were often lined with fox or rabbit fur. The Inuit also carved snow goggles from horn or antlers. These cut the blinding glare of the sunlight as it bounced off the white snow and ice. The Inuit rubbed the inside of the goggles with dark soot for added protection. From head to toe, the Inuit depended on animals and their own skill to supply what was needed for survival. Snow goggles let through only a small amount of light. The big truth. The amazing caribou. Every summer, caribou gathered into gigantic herds and walked hundreds of miles toward feeding grounds. Once there, a caribou might eat 12 pounds of grass and other plants per day. A large male can stand 5 feet high, taller if you include the antlers, and weigh 350 to 400 pounds on average. Caribou are famous for their role in Inuit life, but the animal itself is extraordinary. Female antlers. Female caribou are the only female deer to grow antlers. They use them to fight off wolves while guarding their calves. Fat antifreeze. Caribou fat remains a liquid in low temperatures. The unusual fat helps the caribou survive the freezing Arctic winter. Temperature control. The unusual arteries and veins in caribou legs allow the temperature in the legs to drop to 50 degrees Fahrenheit without harming the animal. The body temperature elsewhere remains normal. A skilled builder could put up an igloo in an hour. House of snow. The Inuit word igloo means house. Inuit use the word for any dwelling. The famous snow house that English speakers call the igloo was only used by Inuit in Greenland and in parts of Canada. To make an igloo, the builder used a knife made from bone or horn to cut blocks of snow from a pickstick or snowdrift. Cutting blocks left a pit in the snow. The builder then used the blocks to build a dome over the pit. The sleeping area in the pit lay below the snow level outside the igloo. The Inuit polished the blocks to make them fit together. A well-made igloo was strong enough to support a person standing on the roof. It was also warm. The snow piled outside, plus the air trapped in the snow blocks, acted as insulation. As a result, the inside of an igloo was sometimes heated up to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. An Inuit man opens the door of his igloo. Light and heat. An Inuit family could make the igloo warmer by lighting a kudlik, a lamp of carved soapstone filled with seal or whale oil. The lamp provided not only light, but heat. A family used its kudlik to cook, dry clothes, and melt snow for drinking water. The Inuit called the snow melted for water, aniuk. In fact, the Inuit had made more than 30 different words for snow. An Inuit woman tends her kudlik. Seal and whale oil came from the fat of each animal. The Inuit sometimes built homes out of rocks, sod, and whale bones. In some parts of the Arctic, the Inuit might spend the summer months in tents. Like their Thule ancestors, these Inuits stretched seal or caribou skins over a frame made of wood or whalebones. In Alaska, the Inuit preferred houses built of stone and frozen sod. Other Inuit built small structures out of driftwood. 20 people might live in a large house. People hung up skins to create walls. Huskies can withstand temperatures as cold as negative 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Travel by land and sea. The Inuit used several clever inventions to travel the rough Arctic landscape. On land, the dog sled was the main way of getting around. The Inuit made the sled from wood or animal bones and set it on runners that glided across snow. A dog sled carried goods, and an Inuit musher, or driver, steered. A team of dogs, the ancestors of today's Huskies and Malamutes, pulled the load.
Students, remember that tutoring and choir start tonight. If you were signed up for tutoring and choir, that is an automatic go to parent pickup to wait for that. You will not need a pass to stay for tutoring or choir.
Inuit called a dog sled a kamutik. Art and spirit. Inuit art is famous around the world. Members of both the Dorset and Thule cultures carved animal shapes and masks out of bone, caribou, antler, walrus tusk, and stone. The Inuit also shaped the figurines and other items believed their works had the power to keep away evil or allow them to contact spirits. Members of the Thule people also made everyday items that range from buttons and earrings to harpoons. This is a comb in the shape of a woman. making the journey. An Inuit musher called landmarks such as rivers and hills to guide them on his journey. The tundra, however, was often a flat plain where everything looked the same. In that case, the musher built a pile of stones called an Inuksuk. This served as a sign pointing a traveler in the right direction. An Inuksuk had other uses. It could show a good hunting spot, mark a food storage location, or fence in caribou to be killed. In 2010, the Winter Olympics logo was based on an Inuksuk. Some Inuksuks have a human shape. Kayaks were sometimes 20 feet or 6 meters long. The Inuit invented kayaks. On the water, Inuit living on the coast used different kinds of boats for different jobs. The one-man kayak was covered in waterproof sealskin and built especially to fit its owner's body. Thanks to its shape, the kayak was almost impossible to tip over. Even when it did, the kayaker could easily roll the boat back into position. The Inuit built a faster type of long kayak to travel great distances. The Inuit used the larger umayak to carry dogs, goods, and larger numbers of people. To build an umayak, the Inuit fitted together pieces of driftwood with pegs and tied cords. Sealskin was then stretched over the frame. A large umayak might be 30 feet or 9 meters long. Inuit sailors could bring the flat-bottomed boat close to shore. That made the umayak an excellent boat for hauling goods from one hunting ground to the next. About 7 sealskins are needed to cover one large umayak. This is an Inuit couple. Inuit society. Inuit men and women each had clear roles. The men hunted and fished. Women cooked, sewed, and raised the children, though some women also fished. Because men spent long periods away on hunts, women had to be strong and independent. At the same time, men had to know how to cook and sew for themselves when they were away from home. Most Inuit got married. Families, in fact, sometimes arranged a marriage years before their children became adults. The Inuit did not have wedding ceremonies. Marriage. Inuit marriages often included more than one wife or husband. If a man was leaving on a journey, for example, he might trade his sick wife to another man for a healthier wife who could manage the home. Survival depended on man-woman teamwork. If children were born from such marriages, they considered it normal to have 2 mothers and 2 fathers. A large family at home. An Inuit family often included more people than just a father, mother, and children. The children's grandparents might live with the family. In some cases, uncles and aunts and their children lived with them too. But every household had one head. This man was respected for his wisdom and experience. Though Inuit men and women considered themselves equals in many ways, the men made the important decisions. Timeline of Inuit history. In 1000 CE, Inuit ancestors known as Thule moved east from the Alaskan coast. In 1200, the Thule meet the Vikings. In 1576, the Inuit have first contact with Europeans. In the 1800s, European diseases killed 90% of the Inuit in Alaska. In 1999, Nunavut, where the population is mostly Inuit, becomes a territory in Canada. Taboos. Inuit society did not have government or laws, but people understood the difference between right and wrong actions. Inuit considered some actions taboo and never did them. For example, it was taboo to murder an Inuit elder. An elder taught important lessons about survival skills and the Inuit religion. Killing him robbed all Inuit of the elder's valuable knowledge. If an Inuit broke such a taboo, the community called in a shaman to make things right. Inuits learned from their elders. Some Inuits believed that breaking a taboo brought bad weather. Inuits traveled to trading posts to exchange furs or other goods. European explorers and traders had contact with the Inuit first in Greenland in 1576 and later in Canada and Alaska. After contact, however, the Inuit began dying in great numbers from European diseases. In western Alaska, for example, 90% of the Inuit died in the 1800s. The Inuit had no idea that germs were to blame. Instead, they believed they had angered the animal spirits by not properly sacrificing to their gods before eating their food. Changing ways. Today, differences between the Inuit and Europeans still affect Inuit society. The Inuit continue to adjust to new ways. Their challenge is to find ways to honor the traditions of their elders while living in today's rapidly changing world. In Canada's Nunavut territory, 83% of the people are Inuit. Girls from Nunavut dress in traditional clothing. True statistics. Amount of calories the Inuit got from fat, 75%. Weight of a large caribou, 400 to 700 pounds. Length of large bowhead whale, 65 feet. Number of hunters in a large umayak, 20. Temperature inside an igloo, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Number of Inuit words for snow, more than 30. Length of the largest kayaks, 20 feet. Depth of a kayak, about 7 inches. Length of a large umayak, 30 feet. Percentage of Greenlanders with Inuit blood, 90%. Percentage of Western Inuit who died in the 1800s, 90%. Number of people in Nunavut, 32,900. Did you find the truth? True. The Inuit did eat raw meat. False. The Inuit have exactly 5 different words for snow. They actually have 30. Important words. Anorak, a hooded coat with a sealskin outer shell. Caribou, reindeer. Harpoons, long spears used to hunt seal and whale. Igloo, homes, Inuit homes made from blocks of snow. Insulation, any material used to keep a house warm. Inuksuk, piled rocks used as a marker for travelers. Comic, soft fur-lined waterproof boots. Kudlik, a soapstone lamp in which seal or whale oil is burned. Sacrifice, something valuable given to their god or spirit. Shaman, a holy man and healer. Taboo, something prohibited, which means not allowed. Tendon, stringy tissue that attaches muscle to bone. Thule, the early Inuit people. Tundra, flat, treeless plain found in the Arctic. The Inuit. What were some Inuit sewing tools made from? Needles made from bones. Thread came from animal tissues. Inside you'll find the clever Inuit hunting methods, maps, a timeline, photos, and the creature believed to be among the world's longest living animals. Surprising true facts that will shock and amaze you. The Inuit.